Let me start out by thanking the Western Reserve chapter of the Links Incorporated for hosting what's going to be a wonderful evening and very educational for all of us. We're going to get a few insights into what it's like touring a Broadway production and from the perspective of one of our own. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Karamu House Incorporated and its just truly remarkable president and CEO, Tony Sias, who has and Tony deserves so much of our thanks and gratitude for what he's done here at Karamu in terms of the programming, in terms of the facility, so many fresh and bright ideas that continue to make this the spot to be. If you're in Fairfax, the spot to be in the arts in Cleveland, Ohio. So again, a second hand for Tony. What the heck? A second hand for Tony. And Tamara, thank you so much for that wonderfully generous introduction. And so, without further ado, let's dive into this Q&A.
Oh, I'm excited.
Why not? Let's do that.
Okay.
So, Hannah, tell us, how does it feel to be back in your hometown, performing in front of family and friends in a Tony Award-winning, mega Tony Award-winning musical in Cleveland's own Playhouse Square? What's that like?
Oh, I mean, when you just said it all in once, I got chills. Like, I don't think I think about it too much because I've been super excited to come for Cleveland so long because it just feels so long. But when you put all those things behind it, like, oh, it's a Tony-winning show, it's a Broadway touring musical, I think, like, those things still haven't settled in. I think just the day-to-day of it, you know, you just can get so overwhelmed with just the day-to-day task of the performing aspect of it. You don't even think about those things. So it's nice to have moments like this where you let it sink in and let all that hard work, you're like, oh my God, it did like pay off. But it feels spectacular, but it also feels weird because I grew up going to shows at Playhouse Square, but never from this end. So it feels very familiar, but very unfamiliar at the same time. I feel like I'm in this weird in-between. And also, I'm thrilled to be in front of my family and friends, but I'm also nervous because I don't really like performing in front of my family and friends. I'd rather perform for strangers. So I literally tell everybody who I know who comes to the show, I'm like, don't tell me you're coming. I don't want to know. Call me after. I just need to like do the show, and then I'll see you later. So
I'm curious. Do you have a little more nerves, and how do you deal with the nervousness of the production of this magnitude back home? Your friends and family are there. Even if they don't tell you they're coming, you know there are probably a couple of them in the audience.
One, I don't think about it. If nobody has said they're coming, they're not here. They're not here, so I don't think about it that way. But how do I deal with the nerves if I know somebody's there? I pray. I pray before every show, though, regardless if somebody's there or not. Literally, that's part of my pre-show routine. I do it right before I walk on stage. And I just like ask God, I'm like, please tell this story through me. And what happens, happens. I mean, that's the truth. We all as actors get off stage. And I mean, I've gotten off stage and been mad, been like, oh, my mom was here, or oh, my teacher was here and I messed up, or that wasn't the best I could do. And we all do it. Or especially, I've only been on this show for 4 months, and yet so many actors, me, myself, we've messed up, and you just have to go home and deal with it. But the beauty of it is that we're not robots. We're real people on the stage telling, stories about real people. So, like, that's the hard part about it, but that's the beauty because we're humans, and mistakes are going to happen.
That's the beauty of live theater.
Mm-hmm.
Every night is a different experience. The audience is different. You can rest assured that either you or one of your fellow actors is going to drop a line, miss an entrance. Yep. I mean, and you just have to be prepared
ready
for it.
Or technical difficulties. The other day, the turntable didn't start. But what's magic about it is it's like playing a team sport. Yeah. When something wrong happens, everybody's now tuned in. and figuring out how are we going to fix this?
How are we going to fix
How are we
this?
going to get out of this? So that's fun too.
You know, I have a set of questions I'm prepared to ask, but I have the feeling that we're going to engage in some digressions and find ourselves in some interesting avenues and streets that we might not have anticipated. I'm sure that everybody here, particularly some of the high school students, are very curious as to when you first recognized that you had a passion for the arts, and then how did you go about pursuing it?
Well, I think I knew immediately. Like, I was maybe 6 when I first saw probably a bad production of Bye Bye Birdie. Sure, it wasn't great. It was like, but I loved it. And at 6 years old, I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And I wanted to do that. And I used to walk around my house singing the songs of that show. But honestly, throughout my life, nobody ever came up to me and they're like, Hannah, like, you're good at this. Like, you should pursue this. Like, everybody was like, maybe you could be a doctor. You should really study hard in school, get good grades. But I loved it. And honestly, before I started any formal training, I was in my backyard making up worlds in the woods. I was making up dances. I was singing songs. I was kind of just doing it all by myself before anybody even in my family was like, let's even get her some formal training. It was just kind of me doing what I guess I was just like naturally meant to do, is pretend.
Well, apparently, and I'm going to get into this a little bit more about your parents. Apparently, though, your parents saw this love and said, I think we should enroll her in some formal classes,
yes.
Get her some formal training.
Yes, no. So my parents, but they came in clutch, though. They were very supportive. Once they saw how much I loved it, I started maybe theater camp at 7. Maybe by 8th grade, I started voice lessons. I was in dance class at Shaker Dance Academy at like 13. So the training definitely came in. And my parents I was very fortunate to have very supportive parents who were like, you know what, if this is what you want to do, they tried to always give me the tools that I needed to succeed. Because the truth is, this art form, it's a craft, and it takes so much training, so many teachers. So I was very grateful to be given those tools, though.
Well, apparently your parents were a lot different than other parents I've heard about when their child expressed an interest to go into the arts. Your mother, who's here,
she's here,
a physician.
Look at her. Yay!
Your father, an architect.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to give you a little time to answer this. Uh-huh. What was their reaction when they first knew for certain, this is what our daughter wants to do? And I asked this question because I had an opportunity one time to talk with Cicely Tyson.
Oh, okay.
And I met her when I was a student at Harvard College, and then I met her 40 years later on the set of Alex Cross. Uh-huh. And it just so happened in between takes we got a chance to chat, and she told me, her parents, West Indian immigrants, uh-huh. When she told her parents that she wanted to be an actress, her mother said, well, that's fine, but you're going to have to move out.
Wow.
Which is exactly what she did at a very young age. So I assume your parents did not tell you you had to leave the house.
They did not. They were not that hard. They were not that hard. I'm grateful because I probably would have been like, it's okay. I guess I'm going to stay here then. No, they were supportive. They were supportive to an extent, but they were also very realistic. So they wanted me to follow my passion. My Auntie Kim, she's an actress, so we had seen people in our family had been successful at it, so it definitely was an option. However, like I said, I was not necessarily the most naturally gifted child. So I think my parents were realistic to the point that they were like, if you want to do this, you need to work hard at it, and you have to go to school for it. And my mom was clear, like she wanted me, if I couldn't get into a good musical theater college with a good program, then we probably need to take that as a sign that, maybe there needs to be a plan B. So there was definitely steps. My parents were concerned, and they wanted me to be able to get to the certain checkpoint so they knew, okay, that maybe this was viable.
Well, that's not an uncommon experience. Mm-hmm. When I told my parents that I wanted to be an attorney, they were concerned about that.
What?
Because, yes, this was during the 60s and 70s when most African American attorneys, the vast majority, were scuffling to represent clients in criminal court and chasing ambulances. They wanted me to be a physician, like your mother is.
Right.
And so it's not unusual when a good parent is concerned about their child's security. Let me ask you before, because I want to get into your decision to go to college as opposed to heading straight out to LA or Hollywood or New York City. Which of your skills do you think came the easiest to you? The acting, the dancing, or the singing? And do you have a preference? Is there one that fulfills you more?
Yes. So I think acting comes the most natural to me. Okay. And it's also my favorite. Okay. If I could only do one thing for the rest of my life, I would continue to act. And I think that's what I love about the other things. It's the storytelling. Even in dance, I love acting. Even through song, I love acting. So yes, acting is my favorite, and I think it also was the easiest for me.
Which one was the toughest? The
Singing.
one you had to singing
It's
more
still
than
the
dancing,
toughest.
huh? Really? Okay.
It's still the toughest every day of my life. So, yes.
It's worked out. It's worked out.
It's worked it out, but yeah.
So tell me this. Tell us why you made the decision. You kind of alluded to this a little bit. Why you made the decision to go to college and not just because so many young people who aspire to be performers. You know, as soon as they graduate from high school, they hightail it out to one of the coast to try to survive that meat grinder.
Yeah, and like everybody has a different path. I think that's like the crazy thing about this art form. There is no one path. There is no get a BFA, go to Broadway, you win. There is no, move straight out of home and go to New York and you lose. It's kind of what you feel is right for you. I know the girl who plays Eurydice on Broadway, Eva Noblezada, she was on Broadway right out of high school. They found her at the Jimmy Awards in New York, and they were like, you're amazing, and that was her path. So my path was I definitely needed training. Even myself, I think I appreciate about myself is I've been very honest with myself. I knew where I was at senior year of high school versus where I wanted to be / what it would take to literally do what I wanted to do. I needed 4 years of a BFA program. So that's why I decided to do it. And it was the best decision for me because I don't think I could survive 8 shows a week without training. And I think another thing is I wanted to not like get lucky in work. I wanted to be able to sustain a career. So I thought if I went to college, honed in on my craft, I would be able to sustain a career better.
Yeah, that deserves applause because that's strategic thinking. That's strategic thinking, not playing the long game, not the short game.
Yeah, play the long game.
Now I'm going to jump out of order because you provided a wonderful segue to another question that I had for you, and I think the audience might be interested in. And most people who go and see performances, stage performances of touring shows, of Broadway shows, they don't really give much thought and attention to the demands that are placed on an actor to perform a show 8 times, often 9 times a week.
Yes.
What do you do to maintain the physical, mental, and emotional edge that you need to survive that very rigorous demands that are imposed on you when you do a show like Hadestown?
No, I am just now learning. I've been touring for 4 months, but before this I was in college, and so this is the first thing I've done outside of college, and so I just learned about what it is to do 8 shows a week, and that is a completely different skill set in itself. I remember when I was auditioning for shows, that is another skill set. That's a completely different skill set, but performing 8 shows a week, that is something that I had to learn quickly on how to survive. So everybody does stuff differently, but especially if you're in a principal track in a show, you can't go out. There is no partying, there's no hanging out, there's no alcohol, there's 8 to 10 hours of sleep. this has been the hardest part for me, drinking so much water. I mean, like, I tried in college, I lived off of like a venti from Starbucks, coffee and Coke, no more. Had to cut that out. Drinking lots of water. I do hot yoga almost every day. I try to do like Bikram hot yoga to like warm up my voice and my body. You have to have a good support system. I call my friends a lot. I call my family a lot, especially when you're on the road. You need a group of people. I journal. I try to meditate. There's so many things that you have to, it's a disciplined life. Mm-hmm. And I found that even in college though, like I knew even in college, there are people who will go to school to get a BFA in this. And you can kind of tell quickly they're not going to do it because the work ethic is not there. The discipline is not there from the beginning. Even in college, I did not go to parties. People would be like, Hannah, why aren't you coming out? Why are you in the practice room all the time? And they'll make you feel bad.
Mom is probably happy to hear this. She was not at the parties every Friday and Saturday night.
I was in the practice. I was in the practice room, and I went to the practice room the furthest away from my dorm because I knew if I went to the practice room the furthest away, I'd stay there the longest. Versus if I went to the practice room in my dorm, I'd be in there maybe 15 minutes, be like, call it a quit, go back upstairs, you know? So there's definitely this, to sustain 8 shows a week, to sustain a career, there's a discipline about, and there's a craft to it. My director just came and she watched the show and she was telling me, yeah, surviving 8 shows a week, I'm like, sometimes I get so confused about what do I do when I don't feel it. When I just don't feel it, when I don't just feel sad or whatever. And she was like, that's what craft is. That's what discipline is. And she even said, like, I sing this song in the show Flowers, which is a very emotional song. She goes, you should do the monologue version of that song once a week. So even I learned doing a show 8 times a week, I thought, I'd sing these songs all the time. I act these things all the time. I don't have to work at it. No, even the stuff I do 8 times a week, I still practice those songs. I still have to go over the acting of it. So I think long story short, at 8 shows a week, it's about discipline.
Students and adults. An important message. Because, the truth is, so often people feel that they see a performer, they say, I can do that. They see a comedian, I could go tell jokes. They see a politician, I could win an election. Mm. And people think it's just that easy. Mm. But it absolutely isn't. And particularly when you're playing the long game mm-hmm. and you're in it for the long term, the sacrifices that you have to make on a regular basis, on a daily basis. Because I think a lot of people think that that actors, performers, mm-hmm. They do their shows, and then they're out till 2 or 3 in the morning partying and are right ready when the bell rings to perform at peak capacity.
Yeah, no, literally, one of my co-stars, Nathan Lee Graham, a little star extraordinaire, is so disciplined. You don't see Nathan ever. I'm convinced that he only exists on the stage, and most people I see around the hotel, I see at coffee, I never see this man. But that's how disciplined he is, and that's how he's probably been surviving this career 40 plus years, and that's how he's done it.
There's the long game for you. There's mm-hmm. strategic planning. I'm curious, early in and even now, mm-hmm. And as you were developing your craft, were there any men or women who were role models for you as actors and as performers? Anybody that inspired you? Anybody whose story has inspired you?
If I'm completely honest, while I did have actors that I loved watching their work and of TV shows I was obsessed with, movies I was obsessed with, musicals and singers I loved, I found all my greatest inspiration were from people I actually knew. Those are the people who really changed my life. I never got really involved in just, it was my teachers, it was my dance teachers, it was my English teachers, it was all those people who I met along the way, my real life mentors, my parents' friends, people who I actually saw on a daily basis that really changed my life and made me want to be better. I think one of the things that helped me the most was I always tried to surround myself with people who I thought were better than me. I didn't mind being the worst person in the room. So I felt like by surrounding myself with not only peers who I thought were better than me, but also just teachers who I'm like, oh, they're amazing. And I actually get to see them. I actually can talk to them. That's what helped me the most, if that makes sense, I think.
22 years old and dropping wisdom like somebody in my age, which is decidedly older than her. I'm sorry, I just have to put a button on this one and pause on this one. I mean, the willingness to be around people from whom you can learn, who are further along, developed in their craft, higher level of skills. I mean, that's who you learn from.
That's who you
learn from. You don't learn
from.
from those who aren't even at your level. What is there to learn? You might have a feeling of comfort in being around them.
Yes.
You know more than they, but you aren't going to go too far. You aren't going to develop very quickly if that's your approach.
Right, and yeah, you won't grow. It's so much, and you have more fun, I think, when you put yourself in the room. I used to put my due all the time. I used to be the worst dancer in the dance class, but by the end of the semester, I'd be the most improved, and then I'd probably be the favorite of my teacher because she was the most improved. She wasn't the best, but look at how far she came. Okay. Yeah. Yay! Yay! This is fun, y'all.
Any actor in this room could attest to the fact, or performer in general, that you tend to hear no far more than you hear yes. Talk a little bit about the tenacity, the perseverance, the resilience, what you need in order to survive and prosper in such a highly competitive profession.
It's hard. I think it's good to sometimes say it's hard. Like, it's not always like, oh, I was so determined and sometimes it was hard. And some days you got the no and you cried, and you got the no on a small level. I got said no, like, and it's all the time. It's not even just, no, you didn't get the part. It's, no, you're not a soprano. No, you're not a dancer. No, you can't belt this. No, I don't think you'd be good at this part. No, you don't look like she's pretty. It's all of it. So I think the thing that helped me stay, you got to know who you are. You got to know who am I? What type of artist do I want to be? She said, I'm not a soprano, but I think I am a soprano, so I'm going to sing this soprano song. So I think it's knowing who you are, and also knowing what, and this is what I truly believe now, is what is meant for you will be yours, and having faith in that.
Especially if you put in the work and are disciplined,
right,
as you have been.
Yeah.
Right? Because so many times, it's funny, I was talking about this on a podcast earlier today. I hear so many people when they're faced with trials and tribulations and they say, I'm going to put it in God's hands. You know, and that's okay, but help God out a little bit by doing your part, right?
Yes.
By doing the work.
Yes. Yeah. I love what Kerry Washington said. She did an interview and she said, I think about like life and auditioning like this. If you're waiting for a bus and you run to catch the bus and you pray to catch the bus, but the bus still passes, it was not your bus. However, you can run to catch the bus, but you didn't pray. It might have been your bus. You could pray to get the bus, but you didn't run.
You didn't run.
It could have been your bus. But if you run and you pray and it passes you, it wasn't your bus. So I think I like that. I like that analogy. I think about it often. I'm like, dang, that wasn't my bus. And there was a lot of buses that were not my bus before this bus came. And it was my bus. And now I'm doing the show. So
I've got to ask you, I mean, straight out of college to touring in a show like Hadestown. That's my question.
I know.
Talk about that.
I never thought this would happen to me. Because so much of my journey as an actor, I struggled. So I never thought I'd be the first girl out of school to get a job. Because I thought,
And not just any job.
And this was my dream show. It was my dream. I saw this show, and anytime anybody asked me, Hannah, what do you want to, like, what show would you want to be in? I was like, Hadestown, because it just felt like it was a show that felt like home to me. It was music that felt like home to me, and it was a story that I loved. It was a story that felt important. So, but never did I think I would be in it, let alone like be in the room with the director. When I auditioned for it and it was the director in the room, I was like, she directed Hadestown. And they're like, yeah, girl, like, I'm your director now. I'm like, wait, really? No, so, you know, it's definitely, it's surreal. And I had the moment yesterday. It was, I think, the Sunday night show where I was singing Flowers, and that's the song I auditioned with. But it's just sometimes you feel like, wow, I used to be singing this song in a closet in my room, and now I'm singing it on the stage. So it's crazy.
So tell the audience a little bit about Hadestown and the role that you're playing, Eurydice.
Yes.
I was sweating that one out to pronounce that one correctly, Eurydice.
You guys nailed it. So Hadestown is this great, beautiful fusion of music from jazz, folk, indie, rock, and it tells this beautiful story of two intertwining love stories, Orpheus and Eurydice, and Hades and Persephone. And it basically tells a story of loss, of love, of trial, of resilience. But ultimately, what I love the most about Hadestown is it's a story that's incredibly human. It's a story that everybody can relate to. And I think, and how I felt when I went and saw it, it's a story that will make you just feel more connected to your neighbor, to the people you pass across the street, and it teaches a lesson of what it's like to try again, what it's like to lose and then still try again.
Resiliency.
Yes.
Resiliency. Tell us what it is in the role of Eurydice that really resonates with you personally, and why this was a dream role for you, that particular, not just Hadestown, the musical, but Eurydice, the role.
Well, crazy enough, Hadestown was my dream show. Eurydice was not my dream role.
Oh.
And I really wanted to play Persephone, but Persephone's got to be older. She's got to at least be 30 plus. So I thought, I'll be in Hadestown in like 10 years.
Well, that's what special effects makeup is for.
I was trying to convince people. They weren't sold. They were not sold on it. But the reason I always loved Eurydice, though, but the reason I wasn't my dream role, I didn't think I could play her. I was like,
Why?
I can't.
Why
I
didn't
thought
you
I
think
couldn't
you
sing
could?
the part. I was like, this isn't like my voice. It's too high
How is
for
it
me.
higher than your
I was like,
your comfort level?
Yeah, I felt like I was a true alto soprano. Like I could either sing really low or sing super high, like operatic, but she kind of sits in this like meteor mezzo soprano belty place that was in school probably my weakest area. Like nobody in my college would have been like, Hannah's gonna play Eurydice ever.
So something happened during the casting process that convinced the director, Tony's director, the most important person in the room when the casting decisions are made, something convinced that casting director that you were quite capable of singing that range.
I think Jesus did. I think Jesus came and told the director she's cast to play the part. And I will say, when I was doing my audition, my mom, she was in her closet praying for me. And so I really do, I truly believe it. Because I left my audition for the show and I was like, that was bad.
Really?
I'm not getting that part. Yeah, I was like, that. I called my mom right after. I was like, Mom, I blew it. Well, I'll go back a little bit. Before I went into the room, though, I was confident on the material. I'd finally gotten to the point that I had believed I could do this role.
Okay.
And I even heard God tell me, Hannah, if you get the part, you can do it. And I was like, thanks, God, I knew it. And then I went into the room, and I was like, that was bad, God. I thought you had my back.
Well, why did you think it was bad and apparently the director didn't? Were you just being a perfectionist?
I don't know.
Too tough on yourself or
no,
what?
I don't know. Like, I sang, like, the night before, they had me prepared to sing, like, 3 songs. Okay. Literally, like, the night before, 6 hours, like, before the audition, my agent calls and was like, they're adding another song. And it is the hardest song in the show. They want to see if you can sing the hardest one in the show. I'm like, of course they do. So I'm like, oh, God. And I go in, I practice the song with my voice teacher. She's like, okay, you're ready. It's good. And I had gotten to the point where I could either sing it or I couldn't. There was no in between. And I got into the room and I couldn't. And I was like, And I looked at the director and I was like, that was bad. And she was like, she was nice enough. She was like, try it again. Try it again. And I was like, okay. I tried it again. Worse. It was worse. And I left the room like, no, I'm not getting the part. I couldn't do it. But I guess they saw the character in me. I guess they saw like, this girl is Eurydice. She's got the spirit of her, and like we gonna get that last.
We'll
note.
We'll work on that.
Yeah, we'll work on that last.
We'll
note.
get that one.
We got it. Yeah, she got a bump.
So I'm sure the students here are very interested. I am from the perspective of somebody who's never been in a touring Broadway musical. Tell us about the whole casting process.
Ooh.
Take us from beginning to end. And then tell us a little bit about this tour.
Okay.
How long you'll be on it.
Okay.
How many cities, etc.
All that. Okay. So casting process is, it is grueling, but I mean, worth it. I mean, they got to audition you at least a good amount of time, especially if they're going to give you the main part. They just can't be handing it out. They have to make you work for it. So I think I did 5 auditions total for this part. I did 2 on a video, and then they called me back to New York, and then I did 1 in person, and then they called you back, and that's when it got really scary. That's when they call you and they make it all scary, and they're like, this is the final call back. There's only 4 girls. You're down to the final 4, and you're like, what? I'm scared. And then you do the final, and then it's pretty much you find out if you get it or you don't. I think that was the hardest part for me. It was the waiting. Like, I wanted to just be like, okay, just tell me I didn't get it, and then I'll just move on. But I think, and I didn't even wait that long. I waited 2 weeks, but it was agonizing. I was like, what's going on?
So it's 2 weeks from the final audition until when you got the good news.
Yes. And it was, I probably like auditioned a month. It probably was like a month of auditioning before the final. Like, it spread out. Like, maybe 1 week it was a tape, the next week it was a tape, next week it was a in-person, next week it was a final. So
did they ask to see dancing as well as acting, or was it all singing?
They actually did. So originally I was auditioning for the Broadway company of Hadestown, but to be a Fate and to understudy Eurydice. So the Fates, they dance a lot more than Eurydice. So I had to dance as the Fates. I do think I did well at that part. Maybe that sold them a little bit. They're like, okay, she can dance. She can dance. But Eurydice doesn't dance at all. So I was like, great, I killed the dancing, but she doesn't dance. So great, that doesn't matter. The audition process, and I had auditioned for maybe about 3 other tours before that, and they were all pretty similar. They were all about 5 rounds, and I made it to the finals of the other ones, but she did not get the part for the other ones. They called me and they hit me with the straight, it's a no. It's a no. So.
Gosh, I feel that because I've heard that enough myself. So, can I ask what the other shows were?
Yeah, I auditioned for the Tina tour. I auditioned for the Jagged tour, and I auditioned
the what?
The Jagged Little Pill tour.
Oh, Jagged Little Pill.
Jagged Little Pill tour, and I auditioned for Some Like It Hot on Broadway.
Oh.
And then I auditioned, and I had. This is going to be too confusing, so I'm not going to get into this whole story. And then in my first Broadway audition actually was for Hadestown on Broadway. That was the first time I'd ever auditioned for the show, but I walked into that audition room and got COVID. So they test you on at the place. I had no symptoms, and they said, excuse me, you got to go. So I left, and my dreams of Hadestown in January were crushed, donezo, and it wasn't until June that I got to audition again for them.
Well, you sound like you were destined to be in Hadestown, divinely destined.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit now about your travel schedule and how many cities, and you say you've been on tour now for 4 months. Mm-hmm. How many more months?
Yes. So I've been on the tour since October, and I will be on the tour until next October. Tour life is definitely grueling. I mean, it's just hard because you're in a new city every week, a new climate every week. You don't know this theater, you don't know the town, you don't know the people. Your cast and your crew and your stage managers are your family on the road. Those are your people. So you got to be a good human too. You got to be like, that's the thing, like my college, I was super happy they taught this. They were like, you can be a talented person, but if you're not a kind person, it doesn't matter either, because nobody wants to work with you. Yeah. Nobody wants so.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you think about it,
Yeah.
if those are kind of like the deciders, the determining factors, because there are a lot of talented people, but if they're divas
Yeah.
or jerks,
Yeah.
that people are going to say no because you have better options.
Right.
You have options of working with people you actually like, enjoy being around,
Right.
and don't drag the show and the psyche of the show down.
Yeah, no, literally, especially for those auditioning for colleges soon. I mean, the auditioners are always like, is this somebody who I want to spend 4 years with? Not only like, are they talented, but do I just want to be with them for 4 years as a person? Your directors are like, do I want to be with this person on a year contract? You're signing a year contract. I'm on a year contract. So they have to believe that you're a nice enough person that they're going to want to see you every day for a year. So, yeah, but tour life is grueling, and because we only have 1 day off a week, we do 8 shows a week. We have 1 day off, which is Monday, but it's also usually our travel day. So we might travel, have a 12-hour travel day, get to the next city by 6 p.m., and then by Tuesday, you're back on the stage.
You had a little piece of it, good, interesting advice for audience members in terms of what shows you should try to go to and which ones you should avoid when a tour comes to town. So listen carefully so you don't waste your hard-earned money.
I'm going to give y'all the scoop. Okay.
See, this is inside stuff. You can't share this with
anybody. I know. Tuesdays, all the actors, it's our first day in the venue. We don't really know what's going on. So it's a little touchy. So I would say avoid Tuesday if you could. I mean, everybody's always going to get up on the stage and give it their 100%. Especially like me, who just finished being a student. I also remember how it was like to be in the audience. So I also remember seeing shows where I'm like, oh, these people don't care. And so like I also have that in the back of my mind, being like, I don't want to be the girl on stage who I knew when I was in the audience I was pissed. So everybody will always do their best. But Tuesdays, and honestly, a Sunday matinee, especially if it's at 1 p.m., it's not going to be that cute. Because just think about this. The performers, they just did a 5-show weekend. They just finished a Saturday night show that probably got out at 11 o'clock. And then you have a Sunday morning show that's at 1 p.m., which seems kind of, afternoonish. But as a singer, 1 p.m. might as well be 9 a.m. So but everybody's it's always going to be a good show. But if you can, Tuesday and Sunday matinee, come pick a different show.
Now, they do generally charge a little less for Tuesday shows at Sunday matinees,
See?
but nonetheless, and now you see why, right?
You get what you pay for. You get what you show.
I think we're going to opening up to the audience for questions. I believe I just have one more.
Okay.
And what advice would you give the teenage Hannah and to the students in the audience who are thinking seriously considering a career in the performing arts? Are there a couple of pieces of advice? And I mean, you've already given many, but are there some other things that you would like them to know, consider, think about, ponder, assess?
I would just say cling to your mentors. There's so many people who have walked before you. There are so many people who've gone through exactly what you're going through and now can give you advice on how to do it better. And I would say cling to your mentors because there's going to be so many people who don't believe in you, but there's also going to be, what's more important is a small handful of people who do. So cling to the small handful of people who do and forget all the other people who don't. Because they don't matter. And also, walk to your own drum beat. Do your own thing. I think like I got this part not because I was anybody else, but because I was me. And I just happened to be right for this job. So, but if you try to be somebody else, then you might miss an opportunity that was right for you because you're trying to be somebody else. So, and then I also live by the quote that discipline is working when you don't want to. So the days that you're like, I don't want to do this, well, that's really what discipline is working on the days that you don't want to. So those are like a couple things, and also, trust, and the trust that's what's meant for you will happen for you, for sure.
Hannah Whitley.
Yay!
So Hannah, we're done with the easy questions. Here come the hard ones from the audience, huh?
Nobody better be scared. Everybody better, I see.
No time to be a wallflower.
Hi. I have actually two questions. So one, because I'm a freak for Eva Noblezada, I'm a freakazoid when it comes to her. I love everything she does from Miss Saigon to Haiti Town. Have you ever met her?
Okay, crazy. I have met Eva Noblezada twice, maybe 3 times, but I haven't met her since I got this part. I once again met her I met her backstage at Hades Town. I went and saw her cabaret, and I also magically got to go backstage. I ran into her. We booked the same practice room in New York. It literally I finished my practice from at 3, and Eva was coming at 3:01. And so we walked past each other, but she follows me on Instagram now, and I was really excited about that. I'm Eva follows me on Instagram now, and she comments on some of my posts, so I'm happy about that. But no, I'm with you. I'm a big Eva fan.
And what do you do on the days where it's just you have it in you, but you just can't access it on that day? You just want to quit. You just want to give up. What do you do with that?
Do you mean on an acting level? What do I do when I'm have to do a scene and I know I could do it, but I just don't feel it? Or what do I do on a day that I'm oh, I just can't do anything today. I can't act, I can't sing, I can't do anything. That one. I think on some of those days, sometimes if you really feel, sometimes that's just a day that it's rest. Sometimes I listen to my body and I'm it's a wrap. Because burnout is real too. Sometimes I remember my teachers often had to say, I'm over here talking about discipline and work hard, but a lot of times my biggest note in school was work smarter rather than harder. Because you're going to burn yourself out if you don't pace yourself. So yeah, on days like that, honestly, give yourself grace and take the rest. And don't feel guilty. Yeah, that's what I think.
Hi. Hello.
Oh, hi.
What do you do to keep your physical body in shape to do the same thing each night?
I go to hot yoga now, or I always try to do something physical. Either I'll go to hot yoga or I'll go to the gym. Unfortunately, I think the biggest loss that I've had on tour is I don't get to dance as much, because that was one of my biggest loves in college. I used to be in dance classes 3-4 times a week, and now there are no dance classes on the road. I'm not in New York City where you can just take a dance class, even though I do take some dance classes online. But I got to do something physical, and I have found for me in this particular role, hot yoga works the best because it warms up my voice, my body, and my spirit. Because this role takes a lot of emotion, and that the yoga also helps open that up for me.
How do you work with people who don't put in the same work ethic as you do?
Oof, you gotta leave them behind a little bit. You gotta be nice to everybody. But I think that I had a lot of people in college or friends of mine who were you work too hard. You should come slack off with us. And you gotta to an extent be hey girl, I love you, you do you, and I'm gonna do me, and then we're gonna meet up when we both have a free second, but don't let other people pull you down, because people will try to pull you down. And the truth is, you also can't make people work harder, so you just have to work the hardest that you can and then let other people do what they're gonna do. Yeah, I love your hair.
Thank you. How do you balance memorizing your scripts and lines?
How do I balance it, or how do I go about learning it?
Both.
Well, balance, I think balance is all about time management. And I feel that's something that I'm still trying to learn to this day, because I definitely get overwhelmed sometimes if I don't manage my time well. And I think you just have to be realistic with yourself on how long this is actually going to take. And if I'm honest with myself, if I try to memorize lines and perform it on the same day, it's not going to go well for me. So I usually it has to be memorized at least the night before, and then I got to make sure it's fully there the day of, and then I can go do it. So giving yourself enough time is important. And also, when I was doing a lot of self-tapes and had to memorize things really quickly, I used to write it all down over and over until I could write it word for word perfect too.
Yeah, oftentimes there's a way you kind of mark up a script. You'll get your script. The first thing I do is I'll put my lines, I'll highlight them in yellow. I'll highlight all my actions in orange. I'll highlight the cue lines that I need to respond to in blue. But the point you make, and as one memorizes, it does help. If there's a passage or a phrase or a sentence that you're struggling with, write it out. It helps to etch it in your mind a lot better than if you don't do that. But there's all kinds of memorization hacks and processes and tactics and techniques that you can employ. And I always say to me that the mastery of a character is less challenging to me. The real work is in the memorization. And when you audition, especially nowadays when almost every audition is via self-tape, you want to be word perfect.
So
you don't want, I know a lot of people will hold their scripts in their hands while they're being taped, but I think when a casting director see that you are off book, that you're word perfect, you don't want to give a casting director or director any reason to say no, because they already have 1,000. Right? And that's one thing I think particularly for you young performers, to understand the degree of resiliency, the importance of resiliency, and the fact that if you don't get a role, it often has nothing to do with your ability or your preparation, but there are subjective factors. And that's why in my life, I find what I'm doing now with acting is much tougher than being in politics. In politics, I knew how to win an election. I knew if I outworked the opponent, if I raised more money than the opponent, if I knew the issues better than the opponent, I stood a good chance of winning that election. But you can be absolutely well prepared as an actor and actress and still not get the role. And it's not because you don't have the ability. It's not because you didn't submit a good audition. But sometimes you didn't look the way, you didn't look like the family that they were casting. You were too tall, you were too short, you were too light, you were too dark. You may have reminded the director of the boyfriend that had kicked her to the curb 2 weeks before. I mean, these things happen, really. People, think about it. Oftentimes you'll see a person, you'll have a reaction to that person, and it might be adverse, and there's nothing that person did, but that person reminds you of somebody else in your life that you don't like. So I teach an acting course now, advanced scene study, and the first class I had sent all the students this article I had written, that somebody else had written called Why You Didn't Get the Role. And they give 25 reasons, and none of them have anything to do with your talent or your audition. Things that are outside of your control. So you got to be willing to accept the subjectivity of the process. Accept the fact that you're going to hear no more than you're going to hear yes until you reach Tom Hanks status. Right?
So they're just offering you things.
That's just how until you're offer only. That's what I want to be.
And
offer
even
only.
once you get the job, like everybody on our tour, once you still audition. It never stops. I don't just get this part and get another part. No, I gotta hit the streets again.
Well, you can play this role for 8 or 9 years, and then you can be Persephone.
Yeah, there it is. I'm gonna talk to people about that.
How did you get to be such a great actor?
Oh, you're so cute, and I love your blue shirt. How did I get to be such a great actor? I think that is a loaded question, because I think I'm just learning every day and trying every day to be better. So as long as I think I'm trying every day to get a little bit better, then maybe by the time I die, I will be a really, really good actor. But I don't ever think I woke up one day and I'm like, I'm a great actor today. I think you just try a little harder every day. He's so cute.
That's so cute.
It's me? Okay. So I have two questions. One, the first one is, what's the audition that you think you benefited the most from?
Okay.
And then the second question is, okay, wait, answer the first
Okay. We'll have a conversation. I'm gonna come back to the second one. Okay. The audition I think I benefited the most from happened maybe like, it was probably, so I got COVID at my first Hadestown audition. And then the next thing I had auditioned for was the Tina tour. And they wanted me to audition for Tina Turner. And I kept telling my agents, I was like, listen, I don't want to go in for Tina. I want to go in for a Nikette. I want to be like a dancer girl. Like, do not send me in for Tina. They're like, we're sending you in for Tina. You have to film the Tina audition. I was like, okay. So I filmed the Tina audition. I ended up getting a call back for the Tina audition. And I made it a couple rounds in. But that was the hardest audition I'd ever done in my life. It was like 9 songs. The songs were crazy high. But then I woke up that morning. I walked into a room at 9 a.m. full of Broadway casting directors, and I pretended to be Tina Turner. And after I did that, I said, I can do anything. If I can pretend to be Tina Turner at 9 a.m., then I think I can walk into any room. So.
And Hannah, talk a little bit about enjoying success even when you don't get the role because you've booked the room,
yes.
as they call it.
Yeah, or
talk
for example, like from that Tina Turner audition, they clearly saw me and they're like, she is not right for Tina Turner. But a couple days later, the same casting directors were like in the room, they're like, oh, she'd be a great girl for Hamilton. Like, let's have her send in the Hamilton stuff. So you're always auditioning, or even if it's a no for this, it's maybe a just not yet, or the next, I have you for something else in mind down the road. So always put your best foot forward. So yeah, but.
Okay, my question came back.
Okay.
So what would you tell a young artist that went into an audition, and they have a good audition, but the directors and stuff didn't like their certain attitude?
Okay.
And then I don't want to say they get blackballed in the community, but like they get blackballed in it. What would you tell them?
This is tea.
This is tea. What would you tell them to like help them not get blackballed?
Oh, okay. I gotta help somebody not get blackballed. Okay. Okay, well then, I think, listen, I think everything in life can change. You know, we always can turn another leaf. So, but I'll go back to what I said earlier, that like your attitude does make up a lot of who you are as a performer. You're willing to work, how kind you are to people, that informs a lot of decisions. So I would tell this person, like, go back, fix your attitude, and then go back in the room and show them you've changed. Because the truth is, having a bad attitude is a good reason not to get a part because nobody wants to work with you. But change your attitude, and if you got the talent, then now you got the whole package. So.
And is that Logan up there asking the question? Is that Logan? Logan's in a play right now. What play are you in? Over at Obama, is it?
Stu. Ooh.
Stu. She's at Obama.
I've heard of that.
She was in I matter of fact, Tony directed the two of us in Fences right here on this stage. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's always good to see you. Yeah.
Ah, a star. Look at her.
Okay. What are some tips and tricks that you use to stand out in auditions?
To stay what at auditions?
To stand out in auditions.
Okay, I always try to look cute. But I also always try to dress like me. Like I always try to wear an outfit that's for sure just like Hannah. This just screams myself, and even if it's ugly to them, at least they got, they knew who I was, And also, honestly, I think the best thing to do to stand out is honestly to mind your business. Like when I go to auditions, I come in, I do me. I'm not really comparing myself to anybody in the room. I put it on the table and then I leave. And I think, yeah, like sometimes I think the best way to stand out is to try not to stand out and just be yourself. You know, sometimes people work too hard to stand out and then it actually made them not stand out because then everybody was trying to stand out or stand out for the wrong reason. So yeah, I think everything I felt like I was successful at or I got the job, they were like, oh yeah, I think I was being myself. That's what I would say.
A very quick story when it comes to acting for film or TV, and you're fortunate enough to get a call back, so you know you're getting a little closer to the promised land. With my callback audition for A Man Called Otto, I did some research on the director because I knew the director would be in the room. And this was a director who had actually directed Halle Berry when she won her Academy Award for Monsters Ball. So I knew other films that he had directed. I knew some of the actors who were in those films or knew of those actors. And I also knew his birthday. And this audition was around the time of his birthday. So one of the first things I did, I found that one of the actors who had played Halle Berry's son in Monsters Ball had just passed. So I mentioned that to him. I said, I'm sorry to hear that one of the actors with whom you had worked in Monsters Ball had passed. We talked a bit about that. And he said, yeah, there was another actor who was in that, a guy named Peter Boyle, who also died. It's really kind of tough when you work with actors and then they pass on. And so then I do my audition. And the last thing I say to him is, and I want to be the first to wish you a happy birthday.
This is good.
And his response was, that darn internet, my birthday is not in 2 weeks, it's in 6 months.
Oh.
So I said, I know what you mean. You can't trust the internet. So we have a good laugh. But what are you trying to do? You're trying to, one, show that you're diligent, you do your due diligence, you do your research, but you're also trying to make a connection.
Yes.
Because you've got to stand out. Because I'm under no delusion that there's not another actor or a dozen actors or a million actors who couldn't have played my role. There's certainly many others.
Right.
But you look for ways through your performance and other means to just show that you're worthy of a little more consideration than maybe the next guy or gal. And I got cast in a Marathon oil commercial, right? And so after the audition is over, I said, oh, and before you go, and I pull up my Marathon oil credit card. And of course, they love that. They laugh. And on commercials, they want people with personality. Because a commercial is like that.
Right.
That's how long you have. So you have to somehow convey something that leaves a lasting impression because they want you to leave a lasting impression about whatever you're pitching in that commercial. So try to find ways to, again, stand out without being obnoxious.
That was good.
I got 2 questions. One, I'm not sure if you've experienced this yet, but since you just graduated, but what, if you have, what have you done if you haven't, what are your plans? What do you do when the role that you're playing is now over and you're in between?
Oh, yeah.
How do you sustain yourself? If you haven't done it, what are your plans for sustaining yourself during the times that you're not engaged in doing some sort of performance?
That's a good question. You making me think, because now I'm stressed. I'm like, oh, God.
You got another 6 or 7 months before you
I
have to face that reality.
know.
You're good.
But I mean, I think before I got this part, truthfully, it wasn't going to be glamorous. I was going to move to New York City. I was going to try to get a scholarship at STEP so I could take dance classes for free. And I was going to work at Whole Foods and try to make rent and audition. I was lucky enough to have an agent. But I have friends who have graduated me, and they are also brilliantly making it work in New York and auditioning at the same time. Many of them, there's so many side hustles. I know friends who take headshots for people, friends who create websites for people. I had a girl on my tour who even while she was on tour was doing audio work, like voiceover work. There's people who, I did the contract at the Muni, and I knew a lot of people who were Pilates teachers, yoga teachers, worked as fitness instructors so they could stay in shape while being in between gigs. I felt like my biggest concern was, how do I continue to train and make money while I'm in between? Because I didn't also want to get rusty, because it doesn't help you to audition if you're not ready to go. You need to be ready to go to be auditioning. So I was trying to find all the ways I can train for the cheapest amount of money, and I guess that still would be my plan. I guess I would I'm lucky that I've been on tour now, so I've saved some money, because thank God we don't have to like pay for apartments or anything. So that's a great thing about being on tour, is you get to pocket a lot of your money. So I've saved hopefully enough money to get me through some months, and hopefully, God willing, I will get another job. And if not, I'm going back to Whole Foods, y'all.
You made mention to my second question, agents. How did you get an agent, and what's your advice in terms of how individuals should go about looking for an agent?
So I got an agent through my senior showcase, as like most BFA programs at university level will do a senior showcase for all their musical theater and performing arts majors. So we did 3 showcases, a New York showcase, an LA showcase, and a Chicago showcase. So I did all 3 of those showcases, and I got agent offers from there. I ultimately decided on an agent because, well, one, I started doing this thing called freelancing with agents, and that's like where they will send you auditions, but you're not officially signed with them. So they would send me auditions and see how I did before kind of they decided to officially sign me. And then eventually when I graduated in May, I knew I wanted to move to New York, and I wanted to be a New York-based actor, so I decided to go with Stewart Talent in New York City. But in terms of getting my agent, I remember we were very fortunate, not that COVID was a good thing. One good thing that came out of COVID were all these showcases the year before were online. So I got to watch everybody else's showcase. And I watched all these students, and I would think to myself, what made people stand out? What made people not stand out? And honestly, I thought I met up with the casting director at Lawson, and one of like the best things I heard, he was like, you know, when we're as casting directors at Showcase, when we're decided if we want to represent people or whatever, we want to see what they can be in right now, immediately. So if they're doing a piece and they're great at the piece, but I don't really know what I would put them in, I kind of put them in this undecided pile, where I happen to do a piece from Hadestown. I wanted to be in Hadestown. I'm at Showcase marketing myself as somebody who could be in Hadestown, and I guess I was correct at assuming that that's the type of show I would be right for. So I think about Showcase or even college auditions, I would make your package based around things that you think you are truly castable in. If you think that I'm perfect for Angelica Schuyler and Hamilton, sing a song that's reminiscent of Satisfied, or sing Satisfied. Show them I could be in Hamilton tomorrow, and they'll be like, she could, and they'll put you in it, I guess.
Let me ask you this. Are the auditions that you are sent on, is your agent purely theatrical and stage, or are you sent on TV and film and commercial auditions as well? So
my agent is it's both film and television, but then I also have a manager in LA who also sends me auditions for film and TV as well, because I think we were talking about this, that you're like, it's best to do both. So I definitely want to try to do film and television as well.
One of the things that's kind of interesting to know is that a lot of agents are geographical in their jurisdiction. So at this point, I have like an agent that represents me in Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. I have 2 agents that represent me out of Detroit, one of whom also represents me in LA. I have an agent in Chicago, and I have an agent in Atlanta that represents me really in southeastern part of the country. And that tends to particularly be true for TV and film acting. I mean, my next goal, and actually, one of the things that's helpful to get an agent is to make sure that all of your materials are in order. Your headshot, your theatrical resume, and make sure it's in the proper format, it's properly formatted. If you have a website, That's a very useful tool for an artist. And those are kind of essentials. If you have an audio reel and a video reel, that's great. You have to make sure that you have the right kind of material on those audio and video reels. And if like you've been an extra in a TV show or a film, that's not the kind of thing you put on a reel. It needs to be something where you have are speaking at least some words, or there's some facial reactions, something that people say, yeah, I can see what they might offer a project. So those are some of the materials, the tools in an actor's toolbox that you need to be able to be competitive in securing an agent. And it's a little bit different that if you did graduate from a degree awarding program in a BFA or MFA in fine arts and in acting and in theater, it might be a little different. But if you're going after roles in film and TV and commercial, those are some of the elements that you need to have in place in order to be able to secure an agent. And the other thing is, don't stop working, acting, and auditioning because you don't have an agent, or you don't have your website yet, or you don't have a video audio reel. You still have to be out there pitching, because it's when you're able to land roles, that's when you're able to build a resume, put together a video and audio reel, and then compete convincingly and persuasively for an agent and representation.
And all these things are like all those materials that he just mentioned. I didn't have not a single thing, didn't know what it was, couldn't even tell you my last name until I went to college. And so that's one of the reasons I decided to go to BFA, because by my senior year, they really helped me get those things in line. So by the time I did showcase to try to get an agent, all those things weren't overwhelming to me. They kind of just naturally happened over time.
I want to ask, you've been Harriet.
Hi.
Hello, you've been marvelous.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
thanks for coming.
You've been wonderful. You've mentioned the word resilience a couple of times, and given that we have so many young people in the room, what would you say to them and to all of us about enduring beyond the no and building resilience to do this career for the rest of your life?
That's something like, I think resilience can come in so many different forms. Because the thing is, I think the most important thing is you really got to work on yourself and the self-love that you have for yourself, because even beyond the no's that you get, even when you get a yes, if you don't work on yourself and you don't tell yourself I'm enough on a daily level, even when you get a yes, you'll be in a show and still doubt yourself. And what's the point? You can get a Tony and hate yourself, and you can be the most successful in the world and still most successful person in the world and still not love yourself. So that's a daily practice. That's a daily practice when you get the no. That's a daily practice when you get the yes. So I think working on that every day is important, and also realizing that even though this career takes so much work, it takes so much sacrifice, it takes so much of you, I think I also had at some point to realize you're also a whole other person outside of this. You also have families, you also have interests outside of this that all make up who you are. And so who you are is not a singer, who you are is not an actor, who you are is not this performer. There's so many other aspects of just who you are that make you wonderful that you have to hold on to, because if not, this career could destroy you if you put all your self-worth into that. So making sure your self-worth is based on things outside of this career is really important.
And I would say it's safe to say that it's important to keep on experiencing life, because through life's experiences and through relationships and friendships, that's when you learn the things that you need to infuse your role with something unique to you and something that people will want to watch and see. So you can't just develop the technical skills, but don't have the life's experience that you can bring to a role and make it watchable and something that other people will pay to see and pay you to perform.
I love that. I didn't know that for such a long time, and I got to this point in my college career that my acting was getting too technical. I could read so many books and I could be in the practice room for 50 hours, but if you don't go live your life, how can you be an actor without living life? So that's such a beautiful piece of advice.
Hello.
Hello.
What's your motivation to step on that stage? You know, things happen. You know, for me, my brain died before I stepped on the stage. It's really hard to step on the stage and perform. So what's your motivation if things happen?
What's my motivation to keep going when things go wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's ultimately, that's a good question. I think I keep doing it because I love it. And I guess I've also gotten to the point that I've realized if I didn't love it anymore, I would stop doing it too. Because I also do want to be happy at the end of the day. So if there was ever a point where Hannah was like, you know, I step on this stage every night and I'm miserable, I think maybe that would be a sign to me like there's got to be a change. So I think my motivation at the end of the day is that I do love it. And one thing I do hold on to is I remember how shows made me feel. I remember how TV shows made me feel. I remember running around my house at 10 o'clock at night after watching the newest episode of Scandal and being like, that was amazing. It changed my life. And just like hoping that I could give somebody else that feeling, giving somebody else that same feeling. Yeah, but I think that's my motivation to keep going, even in the no's. It's just because I love it.
Hey there. You touched on skipped around my question a little bit. You said you always knew you wanted to be a performer.
Mm-hmm.
Was it always stage, or was it you saw television and made you do it, or movies? Was it always stage?
It was always stage for me. And I actually didn't even want to do film until the pandemic, until I started putting myself on tape. Because even theater, we had to start putting it on tape. So it almost felt like film. I was like, oh, it's no difference anymore. But so my heart was always in the stage. And I was lucky enough, my Auntie Kim was an actor. And so she would take me to set sometimes with her. And I didn't really like it. It didn't give me the same feeling as when I used to step on a Broadway stage, I used to be like, yeah, I love this. But I used to sit on a TV set and I was like, this is not as fun. And people are kind of meaner. And I also didn't like the notion of doing it over and over and over. So it wasn't until recently that I was like, I want to go to film and I want to try that out. But my heart has always been in the stage.
And a hand for this gentleman, Prophet Say, wonderful actor, technical director here at Karamu. One of my favorite guys.
Woo!
I call him Son because he played my son in Ceremonies of Dark Old Men. Wow. That's such an interesting question because there is I get a different kind of buzz and a different kind of fulfillment out of stage than I do out of TV and film. And what I love about the stage is that on any given performance, something new is going to happen that you're going to have to adjust to and you're going to have to improvise. And the thing is the immediacy of the reaction from the audience when you're into either the laughter, when the moment you feel you have them in the palm of your hand and it's quiet, you could hear a pin drop. And so there's an immediacy, and also the rehearsal process when you're building a team. It's like you're on an athletic team.
Yeah, the rehearsal process.
Right.
Yeah.
You're becoming family.
Yes.
As long as you're working with good people.
Yeah, I don't even understand how film and television works. I don't even get that you just memorize your lines and then there's no rehearsal. You just step in front of the camera.
You will rehearse just before you shoot the scene.
Okay.
Then you shoot the scene. But here's what's great about film. Just a couple of weeks ago, when I was at Cinemark Theater, and the screen is 120 feet long, and then you see yourself up there.
Wow.
Okay, that does something for the ego.
Yeah.
That does something for the ego.
You're
if you're on a TV show, millions of people are
watching it
across the nation. But the process itself, you will do a scene for film or TV. ad nauseum, ad
Yes.
infinitum, you will do it. I remember it was in White Boy Rick. We were doing a scene in the courtroom, and we shot that scene 60 times from all the different angles,
Yes.
over the shoulder, close-ups. It's interminable and it's exhausting, and especially if it's an emotional.
Yeah.
You hope that if it's an emotional scene, the director will only need you to do it a couple of times.
Okay.
And I think the good directors are sensitive to that, and they know that you can't milk an actor
over
for an hour on a very emotionally draining scene. So it's a very different process, and it's got pros and cons of both. But yeah, it is fun seeing yourself up on the beach.
That's cool. That's cool.
Right now.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I thought of another question listening to what you were saying, but my question is, how long will 80s Town run? How long are you on tour? And are you thinking ahead of your next play that you would like to try out for?
So we'll be in Cleveland till February 19th. I'll be on tour till like October-ish. Am I thinking ahead?
And you said you had the opportunity. You might very well have the opportunity to re-up for another year.
And this tour is actually continuing into 2024. There are dates beyond my contract. So, I mean, most of the time, if you are good at your job and you're a good person and all those things, they will offer you to stay on the tour. So that's potentially a possibility. But I definitely think about things. I would love to be in The Lion King one day. I would love to be in a Hamilton production one day. I also would love to move. I love tour, and any actor will tell you they just want a job, so I will tour as long as I'm able to, but there is something beautiful about being stable in either New York or maybe even London and just living somewhere and doing a job. I would be very grateful to be able to do that. So I definitely have dreams ahead of me. Nothing set in stone though, but dreams for sure.
One more question.
Yeah.
So you said it's running possibly with you into October. So how do you gear yourself up emotionally to have the same role, same lines every night, 8 times? This was actually something I just learned last week, which is the crazy thing. So my director, she came back. This is the first time she's been back probably since she first saw me. And when I first did the role opening night, she came back to do a check-in. And there were so many parts in the show that I didn't realize I was doing it. But I was playing I knew where I needed to get to by the end of the show. So the whole time, I'm kind of subconsciously playing the end of the show and I didn't really know I was doing it. And then she gave me this wonderful note that she was like, and I was so worried about building an arc. I'm like, well, she needs to go from, happy to sad, or she needs to be tough to vulnerable. And I was so concerned about making this character arc. And she looked at me and she was like, Hannah, I think you just need to honestly and authentically play each moment to moment to moment. And the audience will be able to connect the dots and build that arc for you. And that changed so much for me, because now I walk into the show and I'm literally just trying to hone into each different moment. And now I feel like I arrive at the end of the show and it feels completely different than it did a week ago, because I'm just playing each moment to moment to moment. And I'm also now doing the emotional scenes so differently, because I used to feel like I had to gear myself up to do this emotional scene. And now she was like, you just need to play the moment and then arrive there. So now I actually feel like it's better for the audience, and it's actually a lot less taxing for me as the actor. So I'm very grateful to be getting check-ins and even being in a show, but learning so much every day on how to do it better and better, do the show better.
That's kind of interesting, because the actors know the beginning and the end of the story, but in order to connect with the audience, you have to play it as though you don't know.
You don't know.
That you're experiencing everything in the moment, freshly, newly,
right?
As if you have no notion
of the show.
Where the show is going to end up.
Which is hard when you do it 100 times. You're on show 100, and you're like, oh, I know how the show ends, but you gotta stay so present and just the presence of the moment.
Perfect. We have one more question.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey.
So you said that you've been partying a lot. Were you ever necessarily excluded for that? And if so, how did you cope?
Oh, I love this question. I definitely felt super like excluded in college for sure, because I mean, obviously a lot of people make friends at parties. A lot of people, like, that's how they connect to people. That's how they connect with people, is through partying. But I also found that you will connect with people outside of partying. And also, like, my friends who partied, I still was friends with them. Like, I was their library friend. So, like, we still were friends at the library. We just weren't friends at the club. But no, I think that if that's a decision that you choose, like, you know, for my craft, I cannot party, you will still be able to find your people, because there's going to be somebody just like you who knows for their craft they can't party either. And then y'all could be friends. So it works out. Thank y'all for coming. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye, y'all. I'm taking it off.
And once again, I think.
I just have some closing comments.
Okay. Oh, no.
First of all, thank you. I can't, I was sitting over there completely captivated by this entire conversation. Questions from the students,
Brilliant questions.
The nuggets of wisdom that you dropped tonight, I think, were certainly priceless. I feel kind of like it was a master class. Right. Is that what they call it?
I don't think I'm at master class status yet, but thank you.
Cite yourself, Hannah, because this was impressive.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm Lorna Wisham, Vice President of Programs for the Western Reserve Chapter. I'm going to go out on a limb and make a prediction that you are going to have your first Tony in the next 3 years.
Wow.
Jessica, you good with that? 3 years? I'll make it. You okay?
And are we all invited to the red carpet?
And we are all invited
everybody
to the red carpet.
Oh, thank you.
Tonight's presentation was just amazing. I think it was beyond what the committee that put so much time and hard work and the planning, the marketing and everything else that went into it. I think this was so much more than what we imagined it could potentially be. So I just really, really want to say thank you.
Thank you, and I'm honored to be sitting on this stage, because Karamu is such a beautiful theater, and I've seen so many beautiful shows here, and such a heart and soul of the Cleveland theater. So to be talking on this stage, thank you so much. I'm honored. I'm honored to be here.
And Peter, I want to thank you, of course, for moderating the program tonight. The questions were perfect. I'm sure we were all thinking of other questions, but I almost felt like you were connecting without the questions, like it was just a spirit that kind of came over you, actor to actor. And it was fantastic. I also saw you on that big 120-foot screen a couple of weeks ago, and it was really amazing to see. So congratulations on that as well. Tonight, as I said, was really more than what we ever could have imagined for Conversations with. But it really is another example of the programming and the service that the Western Reserve Chapter is committed to delivering here in Northeast Ohio. As Lake Allison, our president, mentioned earlier, Conversations with was launched 32 years ago. So there were 3 decades of conversations like this that covered whether it was arts and culture, it was health, it was social issues, it was, a number of different things, national trending issues. And we've had some incredibly prominent speakers join us as a part of this program. So it is a joy to welcome you, both of you really, to be a part of this legacy for this signature program of this chapter. I definitely also want to thank you because I believe you are either have or are going to work with the Cleveland School of the Arts students. Are you going to speak to them?
Am I? Yes. I'm coming. I'm coming. Y'all, this is why you need to read your emails. I don't know what's going on.
I am sure they're going to work on additional questions.
Okay.
They have some phenomenal questions tonight.
They have some, y'all are brilliant. I can't wait to come back and get to see y'all, for sure.
Absolutely. And it really isn't the work that we're doing tonight, you know, thanking the committee, the chapter members that put a lot of time and effort into this. The work that we do in the community can't be done without the partners, some of whom were named tonight, namely Tony Sias and Karamu. Thank you. Asila, who is down here, but I know was a big part of it, and the partnership with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District between Karamu and CMSD, long-standing partnership, long-standing support, and that's how we have a really nice turnout tonight. So thank you. Thank you both. Appreciate that very much. And we've had an opportunity to Playhouse Square provided some tickets to Hadestown for some of our youth to attend. I think they've attended already. And so we certainly want to thank them for their support. We want to thank Rodney. Now's your time to take a picture of me. I want to thank Rodney Brown Photography for having been with us for so many years and supporting all of the work that we have done with the Western Reserve Links, and especially capturing many of those special moments. Your smile, both of you, just lights up the stage. So I really can't wait to see what the pictures look like tonight. And then finally, just a special thank you to all of you that joined us tonight, and especially our Link sisters from the Lake Erie cluster. And I think there are some members, and outside of the Lake Erie cluster, because I see we have a Chicago Link sister in the house as well, Ms. Rhonda Brown. So can all the Links from Western Reserve chapter, Kent area chapter, Cleveland chapter, what's your chapter in Chicago? The Chicago chapter. Would all of our Link sisters either wave or stand up? Thank you all. Thank you all. And a special note, we had hoped at some point that Link Stella Whitley would have been able to join us tonight, but we are sending her a lot of love in spirit.
Yes.
So please carry that forth if you have a chance to see her.
Absolutely.
And I think that's it for my acknowledgments.
Absolutely. So just one point of we have a reception afterwards where Hannah will be out in front. So if you want to get a chance, and obviously we have a photographer, so we'd love to get some great pictures. But before we do that, we'd like to ask all of the students if you guys would just come down to the front of the stage so that we can take some big pictures with you and Hannah.
Got the next star. I gotta get my pictures with y'all before you get famous.
Thank you, and have